Bullies target the weak new kid. Huge mistake. He's an MMA champion's son. Elliot Morgan hunched his shoulders as he navigated the crowded hallways of Westlake High School. At 15, he was of average height, but carried extra weight that made his school uniform fit awkwardly. His round face was framed by unruly brown hair that fell into his eyes, which he used to his advantage. Keeping his gaze down was easier than making eye contact with anyone at this new school. It was his third week at Westlake, and Elliot had yet to make a single friend. Moving from Portland to Chicago mid-semester was hard enough, but the prestigious private school's close-knit student body made him feel like an alien who had landed in the wrong world. What none of his new classmates knew, what nobody here could possibly guess, was that Elliot was the son of Marcus the Hammer Morgan, three-time MMA heavyweight champion. Back home, everyone knew his dad. Here, Elliot had begged his parents to keep that information quiet. "I just want to be normal for once," he had pleaded. His father, understanding the shadow his fame cast, had agreed. For years, Elliot had trained alongside his father, not because he wanted to follow in his footsteps, but because training together was their bonding time. Despite his seemingly soft exterior, Elliot's core was solid muscle, his reflexes lightning fast, and his knowledge of fighting techniques extensive. But no one at Westlake would ever suspect that the quiet, chubby new kid could take down opponents twice his size. "Hey, Marshmallow, rolling to class." The voice belonged to Dominic Reeves, a junior and captain of the lacrosse team. Tall and lean with perfectly styled blonde hair, Dominic ruled Westlake's social hierarchy with casual cruelty. His two constant companions, Tyler Chen and Matt Donovan, flanked him like loyal lieutenants, always ready with supporting laughter. Elliot kept walking, eyes fixed on the floor tiles. "Just ignore them, don't engage, it's not worth it." "I'm talking to you, Pudge." Dominic stepped directly into Elliot's path, forcing him to stop or collide. The hallway traffic parted around them, nobody wanting to get caught in whatever was about to happen. "I need to get to class," Elliot said quietly, still avoiding eye contact. "Oh, it speaks," Tyler jeered. He was shorter than Dominic, but made up for it with extra viciousness. "And it has places to be." "You're in my biology class, right?" Dominic asked, though he knew perfectly well they shared the class. "Partner assignments today. Nobody wants the fat new kid who doesn't talk. Guess you'll be working alone." Elliot's knuckles whitened around his backpack straps. He could drop all three of them where they stood. His father had taught him how to handle multiple opponents, how to use their overconfidence against them. But his mother's voice echoed in his head. "Your father's skills are for protection, not intimidation. A true fighter knows when not to fight." So he stepped sideways to go around them. "Excuse me." Matt stuck out his foot, and Elliot, despite seeing the move coming, allowed himself to trip, scattering his books across the floor. Calculated laughter erupted around him. "Oops," Matt said. "Gravity's really got it out for you, huh, Chubbs?" Elliot gathered his books without responding, his face burning not with embarrassment, but with the effort of restraint. A teacher passed by, glancing at the scene but continuing without comment. At Westlake, the faculty seemed to operate on a policy of non-intervention when it came to the social hierarchy. 3 weeks down, Elliot thought, as he finally made it to biology. Just 33 more to go. The cafeteria at Westlake was architecturally stunning, with a vaulted ceiling and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the school's manicured grounds. For Elliot, it was a daily battlefield. Today, he'd barely sat down at his usual empty table when a chocolate milk carton splattered against his tray, spraying his white shirt and the sandwich he'd packed. "Think fast, Pudge," Dominic called from 3 tables away. "Oh, wait, you don't do anything fast, do you?" Elliot stared at his ruined lunch, counting breaths the way his father had taught him. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. The technique was meant to center him before a fight, but Elliot used it to avoid one. A girl with dark curly hair and glasses stopped by his table. "Here," she said, handing him some napkins. "Dominic's such a jerk." "Thanks," Elliot mumbled, dabbing at his shirt. "I'm Zoe. You're in my English class." "Elliot." "I know." She hesitated. "You should tell someone you know about them." Elliot shook his head. "It doesn't help." Experience had taught him that involving adults often made things worse. Zoe shrugged. "Well, my offer of napkins extends to any future dairy attacks." She offered a small smile before walking away. It was the longest conversation Elliot had had at Westlake. He might have felt encouraged if not for what happened in gym class that afternoon. Coach Brewer had them running the mile on the outdoor track. Elliot paced himself, deliberately staying in the middle of the pack, despite being able to outrun most of them. As they rounded the far side of the track, away from the coach's view, Dominic, Tyler, and Matt surrounded him. "Look at those rolls jiggle," Tyler taunted, running backward in front of Elliot. "Surprised he hasn't caused an earthquake," Matt added. Elliot kept his eyes forward, focusing on his breathing. "What's the matter, Marshmallow?" Too out of breath to talk, Dominic gave him a shove from the side. Elliot stumbled but caught himself. The temptation to really show them what he could do, was almost overwhelming. He imagined the look on Dominic's face. If he knew Elliot could run 5 miles without breaking a sweat, could deadlift twice what any of these lacrosse players could. "Just leave me alone," Elliot said, the words coming out calmer than he felt. Or, "What?" Dominic moved in closer. "What are you going to do about it, Pudge?" Elliot remained silent, which only seemed to infuriate Dominic more. The lacrosse captain stuck out his foot, and this time Elliot couldn't pretend to be caught off guard on the graveled track. He neatly sidestepped, his reflexes taking over. The surprise on Dominic's face quickly morphed into anger. "Think you're clever?" He lunged, shoving Elliot hard with both hands. Elliot absorbed the impact, allowing himself to fall backward onto the track. The gravel bit into his palms, drawing blood. It was a small pain compared to what he'd experienced in training, but the sight of his own blood on the track shifted something inside him. How long do I have to be everyone's punching bag? Coach Brewer's whistle blew in the distance. "Shut up the pace, ladies, this isn't a social hour." Dominic and his friends jogged ahead, high-fiving as if they'd accomplished something significant. Elliot got to his feet, brushing gravel from his bleeding palms, a slow simmer building inside him. By the 2-month mark at Westlake, Elliot had settled into a routine of avoidance and endurance. He spoke only when called on in class, ate lunch quickly or sometimes skipped it altogether, and kept to himself in the library during free periods. The bullying had become background noise, unpleasant but expected. What Elliot hadn't expected was for Dominic to escalate things beyond the halls of Westlake. It happened on a Friday afternoon. Elliot was walking home, taking the scenic route through Jefferson Park. He'd just passed the community center where, ironically, he sometimes came on weekends to use the heavy bags in their modest gym when he heard familiar voices. "Well, look who it is. Marshmallow's out for his waddle." Elliot turned to see Dominic, Tyler, and Matt approaching on the path behind him. This was different. This wasn't the structured environment of school with its implicit boundaries. This was intentional. They had followed him. "What do you want?" Elliot asked, his voice steady despite the adrenaline beginning to flow. "Just saying hi to our favorite new kid," Dominic said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thought we'd see what Pudge does for fun. Apparently, it's taking sad little walks by himself." They spread out slightly, unconsciously moving into positions that would block Elliot's escape routes. It was a predatory tactic, and Elliot recognized it immediately. "I'm headed home," Elliot said, shifting his weight to the balls of his feet, a fighter's stance disguised as casual posture. "What's the rush?" Tyler moved closer. "We're just getting to know each other." Matt circled to Elliot's left. "Yeah, you're always so quiet at school. Maybe you're more talkative out here." Elliot scanned his surroundings. The park was relatively empty at this hour. A couple of dog walkers. In the distance, no one close by. No witnesses. No witnesses goes both ways, he thought, then immediately felt guilty for it. "I'm not looking for trouble," Elliot said, the phrase his father always advised before a confrontation went south. Dominic laughed. "Trouble found you." "Anyway." He stepped forward and shoved Elliot hard in the chest. Elliot allowed himself to be pushed back a step, still measuring, still restraining. "What's in the backpack, Pudge? Snacks? You holding out on us?" Matt grabbed for Elliot's backpack strap. This time Elliot didn't yield. He held his ground, the strap taut between them. "Let go," Elliot said, his voice dropping lower. Something in his tone made Matt hesitate, but Dominic was already moving in, emboldened by months of Elliot's passivity. "Or what, Marshmallow?" Dominic reached out to shove Elliot again. What happened next occurred too fast for Dominic to process. His hand never made contact. Instead, his wrist was caught in a grip like iron, and he found himself off balance, his arm twisted at an angle that sent pain shooting up to his shoulder. "I said," Elliot spoke quietly, "I'm not looking for trouble." He released Dominic's wrist and stepped back, his stance now unmistakably that of someone who knew how to fight. The transformation was subtle but complete. Shoulders squared, weight balanced, hands loose but ready. Confusion flashed across Dominic's face, quickly replaced by embarrassed rage. "You little—" He lunged forward. Elliot sidestepped, allowing Dominic's momentum to carry him past, and stuck out a foot in a move so textbook it would have made his father proud. Dominic sprawled face first onto the path. Tyler and Matt stood frozen, their teenage brains struggling to reconcile the chubby, quiet kid with the controlled fighter now facing them. Dominic scrambled to his feet, dirt streaking his designer. Jeans, a scratch on his cheek beginning to bleed. "You're dead, Morgan!" The three of them came at Elliot together. What followed wasn't the chaotic brawl they expected. Elliot moved with practiced efficiency, never striking first, but countering every attack with deflections and redirections that used their own energy against them. When Matt threw a wild punch, Elliot caught his arm and used the momentum to send him stumbling into Tyler. When Dominic attempted a tackle, Elliot stepped aside at the last moment, helping Dominic's trajectory continue into a park bench. In less than a minute, all three boys were on the ground, winded and bewildered. Elliot hadn't even broken a sweat. "My father," Elliot said calmly, "taught me that fighting is always the last resort. I've been trying to honor that." Recognition dawned slowly on Dominic's face. "Wait, Morgan, you're not—" "Marcus, Morgan's son." "Yeah." Elliot adjusted his backpack strap. "I didn't want that to be the first thing people knew about me here. I wanted to make friends based on who I am, not who my dad is." "The hammer is your father?" Tyler's voice cracked with disbelief. Elliot nodded, suddenly feeling tired. "Look, I don't want to fight you guys, I never did. Can we just stop all this?" Matt, still catching his breath, stared up at Elliot with new eyes. "Why did you let us all this time at school?" "Because proving I could beat you up wouldn't prove anything worth proving," Elliot said. "My dad always says anyone can hurt someone weaker. It takes real strength to show restraint." A slow clap interrupted them. Elliot turned to see a middle-aged man approaching on the path. "Well said, son," the man commented, "though I think your father would also approve of you finally standing up for yourself." Elliot felt a flush of embarrassment. "Coach Williams, I didn't know you were in Chicago." "Visiting your dad, actually. He mentioned you might be at this park." Coach Williams had been one of his father's trainers back in Portland. "These friends of yours?" "Not exactly," Elliot admitted. Coach Williams surveyed the three boys still picking themselves up off the ground. "Well, they've had quite an introduction to the Morgan family fighting style." He turned to Dominic, who was rubbing his shoulder. "Young man, you should know you just went around with someone who's been training with champions since he could walk. You're lucky he's got better control than most fighters twice his age." Dominic's face cycled through shock, embarrassment, and a grudging respect. "You could have done this any time," he said to Elliot. "Why today?" Elliot considered the question. "Everyone has a breaking point," he finally said. "I guess I reached mine." The following Monday at Westlake High, Elliot noticed the whispers as soon as he walked through the doors. By first period, the story had spread throughout the school. The quiet new kid had taken down Dominic Reeves and his friends without breaking a sweat, and he was the son of Marcus the Hammer Morgan. Some versions had Elliot single-handedly battling 10 attackers. Others claimed he'd put Dominic in the hospital, despite Dominic being very much present at school, sporting a scrape on his cheek and a noticeably subdued attitude. In biology, Dominic took his usual seat, but kept his eyes forward. When the teacher announced partner assignments, Dominic turned to Elliot with an appraising look. "Morgan," he said with a nod of acknowledgement. "Not friendly, but not hostile either." "Reeves," Elliot responded in kind. The tension between them had transformed into something more complex than simple animosity. Neither friendship nor continued enmity, but a wary respect born of confrontation and resolution. At lunch, Elliot was surprised when Zoe sat down at his table. "So," she said, "the rumors are true? You're some kind of fighting prodigy?" Elliot felt his face heat up. "Not exactly. I've just been training for a long time." "And your dad is really the Hammer?" "Yeah." Elliot winced. "Does everyone know now?" "Pretty much." Zoe unwrapped her sandwich. "But that's not why I'm sitting here." "No?" "Nope. I'm sitting here because anyone who could wipe the floor with Dominic Reeves, but chose not to for months, is someone I want to know better." For the first time since arriving at Westlake, Elliot smiled a genuine smile. "I'd like that." Over the following weeks, the school's dynamic shifted. Elliot was no longer invisible, but he wasn't targeted either. Dominic and his friends gave him a wide berth at first, then gradually began acknowledging him with nods in the hallway. By the end of the semester, Dominic had even approached Elliot after school. "Hey Morgan," he'd called out, jogging to catch up. "Some of us are hitting the gym on Saturday. You should come." Elliot had been surprised by the invitation. "Yeah?" "Yeah." Dominic had rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. "Figured you could show us some moves or whatever, if you want." It wasn't an apology, but in Dominic's world, it was as close as he could get to one. On the last day before winter break, Elliot sat in the library finishing an essay. His shadow fell across his table, and he looked up to see Coach Brewer. "Morgan," the coach said gruffly, "been meaning to talk to you about track team. We could use someone with your endurance." Elliot considered the offer. "I'll think about it, Coach." "I'll do that." Coach Brewer nodded. "And Morgan, good job handling yourself this semester, both in what you did and what you didn't do." As Elliot packed up his books, he reflected on the past 3 months. He'd come to Westlake wanting to be known for himself, not his father's name. The irony wasn't lost on him that it had taken revealing his connection to the Hammer for people to see past their initial judgments of him. But what mattered more was that he'd held true to his father's most important lesson. Real strength isn't in your fists, Elliot. It's in knowing when to use them and when to keep them at your side. Outside, snow was beginning to fall on Westlake's campus. Elliot zipped up his jacket and stepped into the winter air, no longer hunching his shoulders, no longer trying to make himself smaller. He walked with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly who he was and what he was capable of, someone who had nothing to prove to anyone but himself.